Imagine uncovering a tomb that's been sealed for over 3,000 years. Now think about the terror when one by one, people involved in the discovery mysteriously die. Was it ancient curses or something more sinister? Today we're diving deep into one of history's greatest mysteries. What really killed the people who opened King Tutankhamun's tomb? The year is 1922. British archaeologist Howard Carter, along with his team, makes one of the most significant archaeological finds in history, the tomb of the Egyptian pharaoh Tutankhamun. This discovery took the world by storm. After years of fruitless searches in the Valley of the Kings, Carter's team stumbled upon an untouched royal burial chamber filled with treasures, gold, and the remains of the young king who ruled Egypt over 3,000 years ago. But while the world was fascinated by the riches inside the tomb, something far darker caught people's attention, the so-called curse of the pharaohs. Just months after the tomb's opening, people who had entered the tomb or were connected to the excavation began to die under strange circumstances. Was it an ancient curse, or could it be explained by science? Today we're going to unravel the facts, separating myth from reality, and get to the bottom of what really killed the people who opened King Tut's tomb. The discovery. In November 1922, after years of digging and searching, Carter found the entrance to a tomb that would become legendary. As he and his team began to unseal the chambers, they were greeted with one of the greatest archaeological finds ever discovered. They had stumbled upon the nearly intact burial site of a young boy king, Tutankhamun, whose reign had ended at the age of 19. The discovery was monumental, not just for its historical significance, but for the sheer wealth of treasures it contained. But as Carter pried open the door and peered into the darkness with Lord Carnarvon by his side, neither of them could have known that their find would spark stories of supernatural retribution. The curse myth. In the days that followed the tomb's discovery, rumors began circulating. A curse had been placed on anyone who dared disturb the king's eternal rest. The idea of ancient curses was not new, but it gained fresh momentum when, just months later, Lord Carnarvon, Carter's financial backer, died suddenly after a mosquito bite became infected. His death was mysterious. He had been in perfect health before the infection took hold, and at the very moment of his death, there was a bizarre power outage in Cairo. Journalists were quick to claim it was the curse of the pharaohs that took Lord Carnarvon's life. The press jumped on this narrative, fueling wild speculation that anyone associated with King Tut's tomb would meet a similar fate. Over the years, the deaths of other individuals who had been part of the excavation or linked to the tomb became entangled in this web of intrigue. But what was the real cause of these deaths? Breaking down the cursed deaths. While it's easy to get swept up in the idea of an ancient curse, historians and scientists have spent decades trying to uncover the truth behind these mysterious deaths. Let's first look at some of the people whose deaths are attributed to the so-called curse. 1. Lord Carnarvon. As we've mentioned, Lord Carnarvon, Carter's financial backer, died a few months after the tomb's discovery. The cause? An infected mosquito bite. While this sounds unusual, it's not entirely outside the realm of possibility. In the 1920s, medical care wasn't as advanced as it is today, and infections from even minor injuries could turn deadly. 2. George J. Gould. An American railroad tycoon, Gould visited the tomb shortly after it was opened. He fell ill shortly afterward and died from a fever. This fueled the fire of the curse rumors. 3. A.C. Mace. Another member of Carter's team, Mace helped to uncover the tomb. He died from arsenic poisoning a few years after the excavation. Could this have been linked to something in the tomb? 4. Richard Bethel. Carter's personal secretary Bethel was found dead under suspicious circumstances in 1929, supposedly from mysterious causes. Yet many believe he simply suffered a heart attack. 5. Sir Archibald Douglas Reed. He was the radiologist who performed X-rays on King Tut's mummy. A year later, he succumbed to a sudden illness. Each of these deaths, though tragic, has a plausible scientific explanation. But the sheer number of fatalities among those connected to the tomb makes it easy to see why people clung to the curse theory. Science versus superstition. As sensational as the curse may sound, let's step back and consider what science tells us. The deaths surrounding the tomb's discovery could easily be explained by exposure to dangerous materials. Remember, these tombs had been sealed for thousands of years. As the explorers opened the chambers, they disturbed more than just ancient treasures. They potentially stirred up dangerous molds, bacteria, and toxins that had been sealed within the tomb. 1. Toxic mold theory. Many scientists today believe that the real curse was biological. The air inside the tomb was likely filled with toxic mold, which had built up over thousands of years. Aspergillus, a type of mold found in old and decaying materials, could have infected those who spent long periods inside the tomb, particularly individuals with weakened immune systems. 2. Bacterial infections. Ancient tombs like Tutankhamun's contained mummified bodies and decaying organic matter. Bacteria that thrive in such environments could have been a real danger to the archaeologists and visitors. Respiratory infections could have developed after prolonged exposure to these airborne pathogens. 3. Arsenic and poisonous chemicals. In ancient times, the Egyptians used various chemicals during the mummification process. Some of these substances were toxic. It's possible that traces of these chemicals were still present in the tomb and contributed to the mysterious deaths. 4. Radiation. Another theory that has been proposed is the possibility of low-level radiation exposure. Some minerals naturally emit small amounts of radiation, and while the doses wouldn't have been immediately fatal, long-term exposure could have weakened the health of the individuals involved. Psychology of the curse. Now, let's address the psychological impact of the curse. We know that fear can play a powerful role in how the human body reacts. The idea that you're doomed, cursed, or destined for an untimely death can create a nocebo effect, the opposite of a placebo, where negative thoughts can lead to real physical consequences. Some researchers suggest that the deaths associated with King Tut's tomb were as much a result of psychological stress and the power of suggestion as they were biological or physical. Carter's survival. But if the curse was real, why didn't Howard Carter himself fall victim? After all, he was the leader of the entire excavation. He was the one who first peered into the tomb and uncovered the sarcophagus of King Tut. In fact, Carter lived for over a decade after the tomb's discovery, dying peacefully in 1939 at the age of 64. His longevity often contradicts the curse theory and points to more scientific explanations for the deaths of his colleagues. The cultural context of ancient curses. It's important to recognize the role curses played in ancient Egyptian society. Egyptians believed deeply in the afterlife and placed curses as protection over their tombs. These were not necessarily supernatural warnings, but rather religious statements meant to ward off tomb robbers. For the Egyptians, violating a tomb was an affront to the gods, and the curse was a way to deter intruders. But it's unlikely that these curses had any real-world power to kill those who disturbed the tombs. In the end, what killed the people who opened King Tut's tomb? Was it an ancient curse, biological hazards, or simply coincidence? The answer, as we've seen, lies in a combination of science, history, and human psychology. What we do know is that the story of King Tut's tomb and the deaths associated with it captured the world's imagination, weaving together a narrative of mystery, intrigue, and danger. Whether or not you believe in curses, the legacy of King Tutankhamun continues to fascinate us today.